Most of my students tell me I want to speak better French, Geraldine. Yes, that's a huge goal. That's very, very good. One of the steps that is going to help you achieve that, speak better French, is to understand fast spoken French much better. Fast spoken French specifically is the way that French is spoken in France and by any French-speaking person abroad. I know that fast French sounds scary. It can be overwhelming because you don't know what to say next, and it's a way to make French sound very, very difficult. So today I want you to relax. I'm going to give you a cheat sheet to help you understand fast spoken French much better so you can see wonderful improvement in the upcoming days, hours, minutes if you want to practice your French right after this lesson. I know that the understanding of fast spoken French will depend on your level of French, obviously. So today we have different learning goals depending on your level. If you're a beginner, at the end of this lesson, you are familiar with how French sounds in real life. You know what to aim for. You won't understand everything, obviously, but at least you know that French is this way. And when you're in front of textbook French, you should not rely too much on it for too long. As an intermediate, you will be able to spot fast spoken French elements in French movies immediately because I will show you what to look for. For advanced students, you will be able to add fast spoken French elements to your own spoken French, and that will make a huge difference in your French because your French will sound more authentic and much more fluid, just like your own language is actually. As usual, you can download the full written lesson of this video lesson on Française.com. Don't miss it, it's free and you can refer to it later, print it, take notes, it's up to you, but you can get it on Française.com. This is the second part of a bigger 3 program I'm offering on fast spoken French. The first one was a PDF that I sent last week about authentic French versus movie French. So don't miss it. I did a case study of 3 movies showing you what you can learn and not learn from different movies. This includes Amélie, which is one of my favorite movies ever. And so you can learn from this movie as well. I will put the link on Française.com below the video. Don't miss it. That will help your French a lot. Salut, moi c'est Géraldine, bienvenue sur Comme Française. Allez, c'est parti. First, let's look at the pronunciation of fast spoken French. Before we start, a warning. Fast spoken French is not slow French spoken faster, and the opposite. Slow French is not fast spoken French spoken slower. When you're speaking your own language and you want to speak more formally or clearly, you're going to slow down. But when you're talking to your friends, your family, your neighbors, you're going to speak faster. You just don't notice it because you're not learning the language. So do not rely on softwares that accelerate or slow down dialogues, because the words we use in a fast language is not the words that we use in the slow language with a faster speed. So use these softwares very, very carefully. For example, gotcha is the fast spoken English way to say I have to, I got to. But you will never get to gotcha if you accelerate I have to, I've got to, okay? So do not rely on that only. Use them very, very carefully, but don't expect them to teach you fast French in a slower manner just because you're using those software. So just be careful. Now, let's talk about French more specifically because that's my specialty. First, one of the most obvious things that you will notice in fast-spoken French is that we eat the E. The letter E in English is E in French. For example, no one says la boulangerie, la boulangerie. We remove the E in the middle, we say la boulangerie, la boulangerie. This is not new, but if you're a beginner, that can make a huge difference in understanding fast-spoken French. And this applies to lots of words, including lots of shop names in French. I did a lesson on that, so you can check it out, shop names in French, on Française.com, and you will have all the names and their right pronunciation. Another one is petit. We remove the in the middle. Petit becomes petit. Petit becomes petit. Okay? And this is removed in many, 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 many words. We don't only cut the in the middle of words, we also cut it in the middle of sentences. For example, je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. Je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. Je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. I woke up at 6. If we say it in fast-spoken French, which is real, authentic, everyday French, we would remove the first and we say je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. Je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. So, je me becomes je me. Je me becomes je me. If you're a pronunciation nerd, personally, I don't say that because I have a different habit / regionalism. I remove the second and I say je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. Je me suis réveillée, etc. So don't learn that because that's, I think, specific to certain areas of France. But most people, I think, would say je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. So the first example, je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. And this is what we all teach in fast-spoken French. The second element of pronunciation of fast-spoken French is a transformation of sounds. A bit like what we started seeing with je me suis réveillée à 6 heures. But we can go much deeper on that. For example, je suis allée à la boulangerie. Je suis allée à la boulangerie. I went to the boulangerie. Je suis allée à la boulangerie. We remove the first and that makes je suis allée à la boulangerie. Je suis instead of je suis. Okay? Je suis becomes je suis. If we go a little bit deeper on that, we're not going to say je suis as in J and S. We're going to say je suis. Je suis allée à la boulangerie. Okay? The sound change. They transform a little bit. Je suis allée à la boulangerie with the sound sh, like cheminée, chimney in French. And if you notice the end, I remove the in boulangerie. I don't say boulangerie, I say boulangerie, but we just saw that before. It's the same with others. It's not just I, je suis. It's also you. For example, je t'ai apporté des bonbons. Je t'ai apporté des bonbons becomes je t'ai. That's even difficult for me to say. Like J, T, and I. And it becomes je t'ai. Okay, it's a bit difficult to say because it's not supposed to be said slowly. It's supposed to be said in everyday spoken French in real life. So saying that in front of you on my own and slowly, it's a bit tricky. So remember that the sound evolves in spoken French. The third and last element of the pronunciation of fast spoken French is the transformation of words. And this is what can change a lot of your understanding, because if you don't know that, you cannot guess it, because this is not what is taught at school. So, for example, you can have word changes made of sound changes. For example, oui, which is yes, I assume you already know that. Oui becomes ouais. Oui becomes ouais. Okay? Non becomes non. Non, that's the normal way of saying it. It becomes non. Non. But on top of the change of sound in these words that make the words change, we can have cuts, and that's very, very common in fast-spoken French. For example, instead of saying d'accord, we can say dac. Okay, we cut the end. D'accord becomes dac. Or something that you might have heard, because that's getting more and more common. Instead of saying à plus tard, see you later, we say à plus. And sometimes it's written A plus. That's à plus. It's not a grade. It's just to mean I see you later. And I think, but I'm not an expert in that, you have something similar in English with see you to say see you later. So that's the same. It's just to make it faster to write. We also have un petit déjeuner. Un petit déjeuner becomes un petit déj. Un petit déj, we cut the end. And because we cut the in the middle as well, it makes un petit déj, un petit déj. So we saw that at the beginning of the lesson, and right now we add a cut, and that makes un petit déj. In terms of cuts, we can also cut the subject, and that makes French even trickier. So we have il faut que. Il faut que, it means it has to be done. Il faut que, or you have to in a way. One has to, literally. Il faut que becomes il faut que, because we cut the L in il. Il faut que. So it's a way of saying it. Il faut que. And we can cut the beginning and makes it faut que. Okay, faut que. And it means I have to. For example, faut que je me lève à 6 heures demain. Faut que je me lève à 6 heures demain. I should say, il faut que je me lève à 6 heures demain. I have to get up at 6 tomorrow. What is very, very funny about fast-spoken French is that pronunciation is just a part of it. Now let's look at grammar, the grammar of fast-spoken French. This is something I've already talked about a lot on Comme, Française, so I'm going to go quickly and refer to other lessons from the past. So the first element that I've told many, many times is to drop the ne in negation, something that your teachers might not tell you about, or they might just acknowledge the fact that it's used everywhere. So we drop the ne in negations. For example, je n'aime pas les Paris-Brest. Je n'aime pas les Paris-Brest. Paris-Brest are a kind of delicious pâtisserie that you can find in any boulangerie. Becomes j'aime pas les Paris-Brest. J'aime pas les Paris-Brest. We remove the negation of the ne. This is extremely classic. It's more familiar, but it absolutely is not vulgar in any way. What's tricky is that sometimes it becomes very difficult to understand what it means if you don't know the origin of the sentence. For example, let's look at this very, very classic expression that we use in fast-spoken French. Ne t'inquiète pas is don't worry. Ne t'inquiète pas. That's pretty simple. If we remove the ne at the beginning, as I just said, it becomes t'inquiète pas. T'inquiète pas. But if we add what I just said in the previous part and cut the end, we have t'inquiète. And what's funny is that t'inquiète means ne t'inquiète pas. But we removed the negation and we cut the end. So it becomes t'inquiète, j'ai acheté des éclairs, for example. T'inquiète, j'ai acheté des éclairs. Don't worry, I bought some éclairs. Don't worry, I bought some éclairs. And that's t'inquiète. And yes, it kind of means the opposite of what it should mean, but the real, true meaning is don't worry. If you're a grammar nerd, what do you think it should be? As in, what should we say to say, please worry? We should say, inquiète-toi. Inquiète-toi, which means, please worry. The second element is no inversion in questions. Again, I've mentioned that many, many, many times. We don't say, préfères-tu un éclair au café ou au chocolat? Préfères-tu un éclair au café ou au chocolat? Where we can see the inversion at the beginning of the question, which is préfères-tu? We just say, tu préfères un éclair au café ou au chocolat? And as you can hear in my voice, the tone is different. Tu préfères un éclair au café ou au chocolat? My voice is going up to indicate that this is actually a question, even though the grammar says, the beginning of the phrase says that it's an affirmation. But no, in fast-spoken French, it is a question. If you want to go deeper on that, I made a full lesson, which is how to speak French more fluently, and you will find the link to this lesson on commeInFrançaise.com. We go much deeper on this topic together. The last element of the grammar of fast-spoken French, or the biggest element, because we could talk about that for hours, is that nous becomes on. In spoken French, in modern French, we never use nous. We always say on instead, in exactly the same meaning. For example, instead of saying nous mangeons des pâtisseries tous les lundis, nous mangeons des pâtisseries tous les lundis, we say on mange des pâtisseries tous les lundis. On mange des pâtisseries tous les lundis. We eat pâtisserie every Monday. Okay? So again, it's the same meaning. It's just that instead of saying nous, we say on, and you use the conjugation of the third person of the singular in French. To go deeper on that, I made a full lesson in 2 parts because I detailed everything in this lesson about the use of on for all levels, so even advanced people can learn something. So check Modern Spoken French, how to use on, part 1 and 2, and you will find the link to the full lesson on Française.com. Again, it's a very interesting lesson to boost your understanding of fast spoken French. Now let's look at the other characteristics of fast spoken French. These are things I haven't mentioned much or at all on Française.com. I've talked about that in my paying programs, but not very publicly because this is very vague and relies a lot on the context of the conversation. But I want to show you the surface and show you how you can go deeper in your understanding of fast-spoken French and how to make your French much, much more fluent and natural and authentic. The first element of these characteristics of fast-spoken French is French fillers. We can call them un tic de langage, un tic de langage. These are words we use without thinking about them. And they're very hard to learn in any language, whether it's Spanish, Portuguese, English, Chinese, whatever, because no one wants to teach them because we're not supposed to say them. They make our language ugly in a way. We try to remove them as much as we can, but we're humans, so we make mistakes and we use those anyway. So these are the you see, you know, well, that you have in English, and we have similar ones in French. So we have which is in English, because in French we rely on different sounds to be hesitant. So is what we would say. You have tiens to mean well. Tiens. It doesn't mean take it, it means well in this way. We have voilà. Voilà means, you know, you see, or that's it, in a way. But again, it has so many meanings that it's hard for me to give them to you. But when you hear them, you can understand that they are fillers. They don't necessarily mean something, and their meaning will depend on the context. So check them out if you hear them in fast-spoken French. We have tu vois. Tu vois is literally you see. And it's exactly the same meaning as in English here. So same. Tu vois is you see. You can stop, you can end a sentence with that, you can start it with that. It depends on who is using them. We have bas or ben, which are coming from bien. But in everyday spoken French, we're going to say bas, as in I'm thinking about it and I have to come up with an answer. Bas or ben. Again, they don't mean anything. They're just here to be fillers of the conversation. And we have quoi. Quoi is something you might have heard of. Again, it's very often a filler, not a very elegant one, but something that lots of human beings actually use, like I do too. If you want a full list of them, Wikipedia did a very nice post on that, so you will find the link on the blog below the video. A full list of lots of fillers and extra expressions that are not necessarily meaningful, but are part of French conversation and will help you understanding much, much better. The second element of these characteristics of fast-spoken French is familiar vocabulary and certain use of vocabulary. So the first one is French slang. Be very, very careful with the use of those. I think I've over-talked about them, and lots of students are trying to use them, which is a fantastic way, but be careful not to use them too much, because very often what I see is students having a very formal writing in French, and they trying to drop French slang, and that makes it awkward. So my advice is learn them to understand it, but just use it as soon as you're very comfortable with French, and in speaking more than writing, because very often your written French is still very, very formal, and that makes it awkward in the middle of a sentence. But learn them because you will hear them everywhere. So, for example, instead of saying une femme, we might say une nana. une nana. That's slang for une femme. This is not necessarily pejorative. I was just checking my text with my best friend and I saw that I was using that. So I took only words that I actually use. And this is not vulgar, this is not necessarily pejorative, but this is just French slang for une femme. Une femme becomes une nana. Une nana. We have loads of other words for women, but I'm just going to mention this one. For un homme, we don't say necessarily un homme, we might say un mec. Un mec for a man. Un mec. Instead of saying comment, which is the elegant way to say what, I'm sorry, excuse me, we might say quoi. Again, maybe your mom taught you not to say that as a kid, but as adults we very often say it. Quoi instead of comment. Just on its own, not at the beginning of a sentence, okay? And something that I've already taught before again is instead of saying beaucoup, which is a lot, beaucoup, we might say vachement in everyday spoken French. Vachement. My grandmother hated this word, but it's not necessarily vulgar, it's just familiar French. I'm just saying that in informal settings or with older people who want you to have a very, very formal French, don't use that, but it's used a lot. Vachement, yes, like a cow, une vache, instead of beaucoup. I talked about familiar French, but there is also a use of vocabulary that is specific to fast-spoken French. For example, there's a use of French vocabulary in a familiar way. Here, this is more for advanced students, so I'm just going to give you one example to show you. For example, instead of saying dire, which is to say, we might say faire, which is to do. So, for example, instead of saying il me dit, vous voulez 5 éclairs, vous avez si faim que ça, I would say il me fait, vous voulez 5 éclairs, vous avez si faim que ça. So, I'm using the word faire instead of to say, which is dire, because this is more familiar French, and as a little tip to show you a little extra things in fast-spoken French, when you're saying faire here, you're going to usually mimic the voice or the expression of the person saying that. So that gives a little bit more context on the use, but again, don't worry too much about that unless you're an advanced student. The last element of the lesson today is that I want to insist on the fact that fast-spoken French, just like any other fast-spoken language, has plenty of mistakes. Not mistakes in grammar, like big ones, or of gender. This is something you would almost never do as a French person. But mistakes in the way that the language is spoken. For example, you're not finishing sentences because your neighbor, friend, daughter, father already knows what you're talking about. You have habits of saying the same things over and over, using certain expressions over others. You have hesitations. You're going to start your sentence several times. And you have regionalisms. And to me, that's the beauty of any language. And because I teach French, to me, that's the beauty of spoken French. And that's what I love teaching the most, is this imperfect, everyday, real spoken French. And that's what I hope I'm going to help you understand better today. And what I teach in other courses as well. But to me, that's what you should aim for, understanding that. Because if you just focus on textbook French, that's nice, but no one speaks this way. When you're talking in your own language, you make all these mistakes. You don't think about them. But when you're trying to understand this kind of French, it makes it much more difficult because you're not expecting it and you're not used to it. So embrace it, try to use what I just taught you, and your understanding of fast-spoken French will be boosted like never before. Now let's test ourselves with a little quiz. How would this sound in fast-spoken French? Focus on what I just taught you in this lesson. So first, for beginners, je suis allée à la boulangerie cet après-midi et je t'ai acheté un croissant. Je suis allée à la boulangerie cet après-midi et je t'ai acheté un croissant. Think about it. How would you say that in fast-spoken French? So in fast spoken French, we will remove the E and say je suis allée à la boulangerie cet après-midi et je t'ai acheté un croissant. Okay? So check the writing of the answer so you can hear me actually remove the E. Je suis allée à la boulangerie cet après-midi et je t'ai acheté un croissant. I also added the cut at the end of après-midi because this is a very, very common way of saying it. And even as a beginner, you can actually embrace it. Cet après-midi would be cet après-midi in fast spoken French. Now, let's look at something a bit more difficult for intermediate students. N'aimez-vous pas les macarons? Non, nous n'aimons pas les macarons. N'aimez-vous pas les macarons? Non, nous n'aimons pas les macarons. So how would you say that in fast spoken French? Remember the second part of the lesson where we talked about the grammar of fast spoken French? This is what we're applying here. So we would say, vous aimez pas les macarons? Non, on n'aime pas les macarons. Vous aimez pas les macarons? Non, on n'aime pas les macarons. So you can see here that we didn't do the inversion and I replaced the nous by on. Note that on plus aime, on aime, sounds like on aime, okay, which is the negation of it. But the ne was dropped. It's just because of la liaison, we happen to think that there is the n still, but there isn't. Vous aimez pas les macarons? Non, on n'aime pas les macarons. For the advanced students, it's a bit difficult for me to do it in the exact way. So I'm going to read you a phrase as I would say it in real life and you have to understand what's going on. Ah bah bien, t'as ramené ton mec à la soirée de la boîte, je te félicite pas. T'abuses quoi, on avait dit pas de mari ni de femme. I'm doing that again for you, okay? Ah bah bien, t'as ramené ton mec à la soirée de la boîte, je te félicite pas. T'abuses quoi, on avait dit pas de mari ni de femme. Okay, so what did you understand from there? I put everything that happens in fast spoken French. I'm going to do a kind of a translation of formal slow French. It's not exactly the same because obviously there's no direct translation, but that shows you the intention of everything that is mentioned in the phrase. Bravo. Ah bah bien is a way to say, well, congratulations, fantastic, okay? So, bravo. Tu as amené ton mari à la soirée de l'entreprise. Je ne te félicite pas. Tu exagères. On avait dit pas de mari ni de femme. Pas de mari ni de femme. Okay? I wanted to notice something for you. Yes, une boîte is slang for une entreprise. And I used mec and I translated it to mari just because you probably already know the word. But here, mec does not imply marriage. It just implies life partner or boyfriend. Okay? Abuser also means exagérer in slang. That's it. I hope you did well. Et toi? Tell me in French if you dare, or in English if you can't. What is your favorite way to better understand fast-spoken French? What is your favorite way to better understand fast-spoken French? I highly encourage you share because your recommendations are very, very useful for other students and for me as well, so I can see how you like to improve your French best. For example, this is what you can say in French. J'aime regarder Échappée belle sur YouTube, surtout les épisodes sur la France. J'aime regarder Échappée belle sur YouTube, surtout les épisodes sur la France. If you're sharing a resource, please share the link as well so everybody can enjoy them as well. If you like this lesson, if you learned something today, please share it with a friend, especially a francophile friend. Sharing these free lessons is the best way to support my work on Comme, Française, so thank you very much. If you want more spoken French, I highly recommend you get on commeunfrancaise.com and subscribe to get my 10-day everyday French crash course. It's a 10-day mini course by email and it will help you double your Frenchness in just 10 days by learning more about culture, fast spoken French, grammar, lots of traditions that we have and lots of other things. Students happen to love them. It's free and you can unsubscribe anytime you wish if you don't like it. I wish you une bonne journée, une bonne soirée, une bonne nuit peut-être. and I see you next time. Allez, salut!